Hello everyone, welcome to Be Happy Now Mindfulness for Women Part 2. I hope you've had a very mindful, peaceful week of gaining some more awareness of what's going on in that mind of yours and applying some of the tools that we talked about last week. So I really look forward to hearing how you've been going and expanding the journey now into putting mindfulness into action in our daily life. So a big welcome to you all. Before we go any further, I just want to make sure that everything's working fine. So if you could just please put your hands up. If you can hear me okay, that lets me just know that the system's working. Wonderful. Good, thank you. Okay, fabulous. Thank you. So just to remind you that I will take questions at the end. Like I'll open up the lines to you, and if you want to have a chat, you're very welcome. I'll stay on after the presentation and we can have a chat. If you want to put any questions into the question box, feel free to do that at any time and I'll answer them as we go through. And then, yes, you're welcome to stay behind and have a chat afterwards if you'd like. So I'll just kind of confirm what we were talking about last week, really. But we were covering off the way in which most people try and get happiness from their external lives through their relationships and career and health and finances. And they think that's going to make them happy. And we were looking at how in this journey, what we're doing is really going for happiness first, and then everything else is the icing on the cake. So mindfulness is really a way of being okay with what life throws at you. It's a way of being okay no matter what's going on in your life, which is it's kind of turning life on its head is the way that most people go about it. So it's a very different way of approaching things. We also looked at what mindfulness is. The fact that it is being able to be aware in the present moment of what's going on around you and inside you, but without judgment. So we went through a few different exercises. We did the mouse hole exercise and body awareness exercises. And I gave you some homework with those exercises to just start to bring your awareness back into the present and to find ways to cut through thoughts, to put your awareness onto different things other than just your mind. Remember, we talked about how the mind and your awareness are two different things. So your mind is just a machine that churns out thoughts, but your awareness is like a torch that you can put onto the mind, you can put on your body, you can put on a picture, you can put on a movie screen, you can put on your surroundings. And mindfulness is really attention training. So you're training your attention to be on something other than the mind, which will allow you to, first of all, develop a sense of acceptance with what's going on rather than judging it all the time. Because if you don't put so much store in your thoughts and your judgments, you can be with the real nature of what's happening to you and the things that you're interacting with, rather than your judgments about them, which creates a whole sense of peace. You know, if you're not judging everything as good or bad, then it's just an opportunity to feel peaceful whether things are going your way or not. So judgment really is a key of being able to see through your judgments and not believe them in the same way that we normally do. Once we feel more peaceful, we can experience more joy rather than, anxiety or depression. Happiness comes when we find a sense of inner peace, when we find a sense of being okay with what's going on and with ourselves. And from there, there's an experience that I call freedom beyond happiness, which is really being free from the constraints of the ego. We talked about how the ego is only wanting to get towards pleasure or away from pain, and how there is a possibility of stepping past that into freedom. And the real key to finding this sense of freedom is being able to dive into the gap between thoughts. So we were looking at some practices in mindfulness that help us to find that gap between thoughts. And the mouse hole, for those of you who were with us last week, the mouse hole was a little technique or a little trick I taught you, which is that you wait for the next thought. If you put all of your attention on the place where the next thought comes from, guess what happens? There isn't one. So it's a really nice little trick to find that gap between the thoughts and start to expand your experience of just having a quiet mind and finding some okayness and some freedom with what's going on in your life. So I'd love to hear how that went for you, those of you who did your homework, and hopefully that's all of you. How were you? Did you do mindful minutes, which was the exercise, remember, of just putting an alarm on your phone and taking 1 minute per hour to stop, close your eyes, go inside, feel your feet on the floor, your bum on the chair, your hands in your lap, or just feel what's going on inside your body at that time. Just helps you to cut through the mind, through the judgments, and also to cut through the kind of roles that we get stuck in, which we'll talk about today. So how did you do with that? Did you do that? Did it go well? Was it hard? Was it easy? Just put a question into the question box for me. Let me know how you're doing. Yes, easy to say, hard to do. Says Sarah, but worthwhile. So with practice, you can, yes, it's practice. So mindfulness isn't something that you do once, okay? It's not, oh, I've done a mindfulness course now, I know how to do it. Mindfulness is very much about a way of life, as I like to say. It's not so much that you do a mindfulness practice for 5 minutes or 1 minute or 20 minutes a day. It's a way of life. It's a way of managing your mind so that you start to change the relationship with it over time. So please don't get kind of disheartened that, oh, I did my mindful minute and then I went back to feeling stressed afterwards. That's okay. Remember that you're changing a habit of a lifetime. For many of us, we are so caught up in the mind and all the thoughts that we have and believing what's in there that it just does take practice. But even a moment, even 1 minute an hour, and that's why I was suggesting you just start with 1 minute, that can start to kind of break the trance. And when I say trance, really, if you kind of walk down the street, you'll see most people are walking down the street in what I would call a trance. It's like they're not very present. They're thinking about what they're doing next, which shop they're going to next. They're not really aware of you. They're not really connecting with anything. They're just kind of in their own heads doing the stuff, right? So just to get 1 minute an hour breaks that trance, gets you back to reality, to the present, and gives you back choice. Okay, choice is vital in mindfulness practice because you have actually choice which thoughts you want to follow, which thoughts you want to engage with. But for many of us, we're just kind of at the mercy of our mind, right? So it's really about changing that relationship. Okay, so great. Bronwyn's saying, found it interesting how hooked you got on the good moments in your week. Yeah, interesting, huh? Remember we had that slide on the ego is going towards pleasure and away from pain. And if you're identified as just that ego, that's all you can ever do for your whole life. It's like ones and zeros, right? It's going towards pleasure or away from pain. And the good moments make us feel great and like we're successful, and the bad moments made us feel terrible. Excuse me. And so if you're kind of subject to that and that you're only ever going to feel good if life's going well and you're always going to feel bad if life's not going your way, it's like kind of living life on a knife edge, right? Dependent on situations that you can't always control. So well noticed, Bronwyn. It's really interesting, isn't it? How the ego kind of goes, oh, hooray, this is a good moment. Everything's fine. I'm safe. I'm happy. The world's great. And then 5 minutes later when, we don't get the parking spot or someone speaks to us testily in the office, then everything's terrible again. Okay. So Bronwyn is saying, also interesting to note how my relationship with sad and down moments changed by noticing it and accepting it. I love it. Well done, you. Really fantastic. And that's the point. Sad moments or down moments aren't problems. They're just sad moments or down moments. So if you can notice it and come back to the feeling level and really just observe what's going on in your body. Remember, we talked about the difference between a sensation and the label we put on the sensation and the interpretation that we put on the sensation. If you can just be with that sensation and notice it and accept it and welcome it, it stops being a problem. And a secret is it goes a lot quicker. Not that you want to be doing it to get rid of feelings, because then you're not in acceptance. Do you get that point? It's like the mind is so tricky, right? So if I give you a thing saying, hey, if you get into acceptance, you won't have so much pain. You'll all go off and do that so that you don't have pain, which is really not accepting the pain. So you have to be tricky about that. Hi, Kath, you're welcome. Good to see you, have you with us. It's about really accepting. And one of my teachers used to say, this too forever. So you accept at the level of this feeling of sadness is welcome to be here for as long as it wants to be here, even if that's forever. That's what I call really deep surrender, when you can surrender to the moment to that level where you don't need it to change and you're just okay with, what's going on in that moment. As I said yesterday, it doesn't, not yesterday, last week, doesn't mean you have to kind of become a victim or just surrender to whatever life throws at you forever and ever. But you have to in this moment, because this moment's already happening. If you don't like it, you can change it in the next moment. But this moment's already happening. So I love that, Bronwyn. Well done, you. That's awesome. Good one. And the mouse hole. Did anyone do the mouse hole? Did you find that worked for you? It just kind of cuts through thoughts really quickly. Only takes a few minutes. How did that one go? So the mouse hole was the one where you just wait. Imagine you're a mouse and you just wait at the entrance of your mind, waiting for the next thought, and you put 100% of your attention on the space where the next thought's going to come from. Kath saying it helped you when you couldn't get back to sleep. Oh, good. Great. Because it's just very, very quick and simple way to cut through the thoughts and just to get a little bit of a break. And once you've got a break between thoughts, you can start to fall back into that gap, into that spaciousness between the thoughts. So lovely. Well done. Now, observing without labels, we talked about it, but we didn't do a lot of it. So I just want to give you that exercise now. So I want you all to go ahead and pick something in your room. Maybe it's a picture, maybe it's a lamp, maybe it's something that you know, but it's a thing, right? And before you look at it, I just want you to look away for a moment. Before you look at it, I want you to imagine that you can let go of your visual memory. You can let go of your memory altogether, so you no longer are going to be looking at this thing going, oh, that's such a nice picture. It's rather dark, and I bought that picture in IKEA in 1999, and I went there with Steve, and we had potatoes for lunch, and oh, that duck reminds me of a duck I used to have when I was a kid. Do you know what I mean? Or oh, I've got to really dust that picture. So go ahead now and look at that item with no thought. Instead of thought, I want you to observe it without label. So just observe. You might notice color or shape or texture or form, and see if you could just be 100% present with that thing without engaging your mind to analyze what it is or what it does or where it came from or what you want to do with it. So just being with it as a shape, as a thing in your environment. Just being with it, putting 100% of your attention on that thing. If any thoughts arise, just let them swim past like little fishes and come back to putting your awareness on that thing. Just noticing, observing, being present with. Okay, good. All right, how was that for you? Could you do that? Was that easy? Was that difficult? What happened? Oh, tricky. That was a tricky one, huh? Yeah, we're so used to interacting with items with our mind. A lot of fishies. Yeah, Bronwyn, right. A lot of fishies, yeah. Had thoughts about what I was looking at and noticing, Kath. Yeah, it's interesting, right? If you imagine being a baby, kind of lying there goo goo gaga on your back, looking at the world, you don't have labels yet as a baby, but you're still interacting with things. So if you imagine you're looking at the thing that you just looked at, but you wouldn't know what it was because you don't know what it is. You haven't learned about that yet. So it's being in that state of absolute presence and innocence without using the mind to interact. And for those of you who find that hard, which this looks like it's most of you, and if you're not interacting, just do send me messages into the little question box. Let me know how you're going with these things. Then it just gives you an idea of how active your mind is when it doesn't need to be. We don't need to look at that thing and go, oh yeah, lamp, IKEA, white, electricity, needs dusting. We don't need to do that. We can just be with it. And this really links into what we're going to be talking about today, which is relationships. Now, if you have a partner or a friend, somebody walks in your door, what I observe with people is instead of just being fully fresh in the moment with that person, particularly if it's a husband or someone that you live with, they walk in the door and you go, oh, husband, partner, girlfriend, likes coffee, doesn't like anchovies, smells good, wears blue shirts, likes their duvet tucked in at night. Was pissed off with me about the rubbish, right? There's a whole kind of set of labels that we plaster on somebody when they turn up. That means that we're often not completely present with who they are in this moment, fresh. And I like to do this with plants, actually, because if you have a plant in your environment, you can interact with it, and be very present with it, maybe when you're watering it. And then for the rest of the time, it's just, there's kind of like a green thing in your space, yeah? But if you make a practice of being fully present with that plant every day, you'll see that there's differences every day. There's a bit of brown on the end of a leaf that you maybe didn't notice before. Or it's a bit more droopy today, or it's feeling bright and shiny today. You'll see differences in things every day. So this observing without labels is a really important practice. And if you found it hard, keep going, keep working with it. It comes until you can just see and kind of like scan your eyes over things and be with things without any movement from the mind, and just be with people or things. It's really lovely. So emotional equity, we talked about that as being the practice of just being with your feelings, and Bronwyn saying she had a good experience with that, so that's fabulous. And just allowing your emotions without judging them as right or wrong. And then I asked you to come and share in the Facebook group. So please do come in the Facebook group. I'm in there anytime if you want to ask questions. As I said, mindfulness is a practice. It's not an arrival. It's not somewhere to arrive. Oh, now I can do mindfulness. It's a practice, and for me personally, it's a lifelong practice of getting more and more present and less living in the mind and judgment. So do come and share and ask questions in there. All right, well done, everyone. Thanks for that. So now that you've been practicing being more peaceful, it's time to put it into practice out there in the world. And one of the hardest places to be mindful in is, of course, in relationships. Because one of the easiest things that can knock you out of that can trigger you out of mindfulness, is people, right? I'm sure you'll experience that. So I'd love to find out from you, how often do you feel triggered by people? So for someone in your life, how often do you feel upset? And by upset, I mean kind of anything, angry, irritated, pissed off, frustrated, anything like that. I'm going to launch a poll, and you'll see that on your screen in a moment. Okay, so there should be a poll on your screen. So just pick up your mouse and click on the screen. So do you feel annoyed or upset with somebody in your life? Hourly, like really often, daily, just often, occasionally or rarely? What would you say? So just clicking up your mouse and click on one of those options. We've got daily and occasionally. Okay. All right, good. At least no one's saying hourly. So there's a few more people to vote. So just picking up your mouse. Give you another 10 seconds to vote. And just pick up your mouse or click on one of the options on the screen there. Okay. All right, great. Well done. So here's the results. So 50% saying daily and 50% saying occasionally. All right, good. So for those people who are saying daily, then, I'm sure that's somebody that you live with or see very often. That's quite a lot, right? Quite a lot. And of course, this could be kids as well. I'm sure that many of us get upset with kids because they're so challenging. But it's just kind of an indication of how often people are the cause of angst and upset for us. So we looked last time at the kind of formula that I have towards freedom, which is clear mind plus open heart equals full expression. So in relationships, we're going to start with step 1, which is clear mind. And here are some things to avoid. Now, judgments are easier said than done, but what we're looking at here is how to avoid these through mindfulness practice. Now, we've been practicing judgments on a lamp, right, or a picture just now. It's the same with people. Even though you might feel like your judgments of people are much more justified are true. I'm right about this person. This is absolutely how they are. They're a total pain. But at the end of the day, it's just a judgment. And judgment doesn't mean it's the truth. It means it's your perspective. The more you can learn to observe your judgments without being kind of self-righteous about them, the more you can find that they won't impact on your relationships. Because I don't know about you, but most people that I talk to are having relationship problems are actually suffering from judgments of the other person. He's this, he's that. She doesn't take the rubbish out. She kicked the cat. She, doesn't read the right bedtime stories to the kids, whatever it is. And the judgments are a key to be able to observe in yourself and to take to your partner if you want to have conversations about them as kind of insights rather than this is the truth. It's about kind of taking ownership and responsibility of the fact that if you're judging somebody, you are identified with a certain perspective of life. For example, and I'll talk about this in a moment when we look at personalities. Excuse me. But if I'm a neat Nick and I'm a bit of a perfectionist and I get really judgmental when dishes are left on the sink, is it the person who's leaving the dishes on the sink that's got the problem, or is it me? Are they definitely untidy, and is that the truth of the situation? Or is it actually that maybe I'm a little bit too identified with my perfectionist and I could learn to be a bit more tolerant? Do you get what I mean? So in judgment, there's always the person who's judging always has a part to play in the judgments. And so mindfulness can help you to start to redress that balance. Criticism. Now, this is something I see a lot with women. We talk about men being bastards and really difficult, but tell you what, at one of many, when we talk about the disempowering archetypes, for those of you who've done any programs with one of many, we talk about the disempowering archetypes as being the victim, the martyr, and the bitch. And I hear so many women being critical to their partners. It's rife. It really is rife. And my perspective on it is that we need, as women, to really pull our socks up in this area. I know there's a huge amount of talk about men and, abuse and rape and all these things that is kind of men's domain as being a real problem with aggression and control for men. But I think this is an area that's a real Achilles heel with women, is criticism. And if you're with a guy, there are so many men out there that feel very emasculated by their women and very put down and criticized and not good enough. And for me, I've certainly fallen into this category as well in the past. And it's kind of handed down. It's handed down from mother to daughter as an attitude to women. We can talk about the matriarch as a way of having an attitude to women that, men are maybe lesser or not so smart. They're kind of men are the apes of the species. So there's a lot of judgment that's there, as well as the fact that we're in a patriarchal society. There is still a lot of matriarchal judgment of men. There's a lot of women who say, men are bastards, I don't like men, and all this kind of stuff. There's a lot of judgment against it. And so I think that can sometimes inform our criticism. But being critical is putting down. And what I know of men from working with lots of them is that nothing closes a man down so much as criticism. Nothing. And this can be for a woman who's in masculine energy as well. Criticism is just like a wet rag to a man. It really turns him off. It really makes him feel less than. Remember, a man is all about wanting to feel empowered and strong and capable and like the provider. And when we criticize them, they kind of shrivel in front of our eyes. I've really seen that happen. So just be aware of criticism, that you can take a kind of moment, a mindful moment before you want to criticize somebody, that you take ownership of that judgment. And I'll give you some more tools soon of how to do that, so that the criticism doesn't come out externally. You can find a different way to talk about that. And, that's a whole nother communication series actually around communicating in relationships. But there are lots of ways to take ownership of what you're feeling, to inquire and to share your feelings rather than criticize someone else. So end of my lecture around that, but I'm really passionate about changing the way that we communicate in relationships, because I feel that if you say you love somebody more than everyone else on the planet, we need to be most respectful and most loving to that person. And it's amazing how tricky that is sometimes. But that's a way that you can really use mindfulness to improve the quality of relationships. Case building is something to avoid as well. You know, he never takes the rubbish out. She never feeds the cat on time. It's building a case against somebody that you take as a stand. And in kind of Buddhist philosophy, they talk about the unreal other. And the unreal other is really a set of labels. Remember, we've just been talking about how labels are not the reality of the plant or the lamp or the person. Case building is a set of labels that you create into a story about somebody. He's selfish, he's mean, he's inconsiderate, she's a pain in the butt, she's hysterical, she's emotional, she's over emotional. Do you know what I mean? It's like a position that we get to about somebody. We get hooked into that case, and then we tell everybody about it, get support from them about how awful the other person is, and we look for proof of how selfish they are. You'll always find it if you're looking for something. So beware of case building and have an open mind about the unreal other, that, you know, they're not just a selfish person, they're a whole bunch of different qualities. And when we just focus on them being a certain way and get caught up in those thoughts of ours as being real, we lose sight of the whole person. So bring the unreal other back from rather just being, you know, a set of labels and judgments. Bring it back to interacting with that lamp, with that picture in the present moment in a fresh way. It's called, in mindfulness, it's called freshness of response. Freshness of response, if you want to write that down. It's a way of being with something or someone as though it's for the first time. Because actually it is. It's the first time now. And when we're so used to living through labels, we tend to interact with the labels, not the reality. So freshness of response is just a lovely kind of description of being here now, being fully present with the person. And you want to have a response when your partner walks through the door and walks home, and you go, oh, wow, there's another human being in my house. Wow, what are they like? Who is this? What do they smell like? What do they taste like? What are they like? What do they want to eat? You know, what mood are they in today? What are they thinking today? What are they feeling right now? Curiosity is such an important element to breaking your old mental patterns, to allowing yourself to be fully in the present, and to bringing mindfulness into your relationships. So thinking you know what's going on with them, right? This is part of this whole same picture. Just because they felt like that in the past and they've been really upset when they don't get a promotion at work, and they walk in the door and said, I didn't get that promotion again, and instantly you're going to go, oh no, it's going to be a bad night. They're going to be really upset and grumpy for a week now. Don't assume that. Investigate, bring curiosity into your conversations. What's that like for you is a great question. How do you feel about that? What do you think about that? What's that like for you? Like today, now, in this moment, what's it like for you? So be curious with your partner, with your family. Investigate what's real for them in that moment. And just a little tip, even if somebody says something that you don't agree with, just because it's their experience, you have to validate it. So I might say, you know, my partner walked in and he's absolutely completely selfish. He didn't put the big knives the right way up into the dishwasher, and he's just the most selfish person I've ever met. So even that's like a ridiculous judgment, right? You know, who cares which ways the knives are up or down? If I'm saying that, you need to be able to validate that that's my experience. So I would be able to say, you know, okay, so I get that if the way the knives are going in the washing machine is important to you, I get that you'd be upset about that, even though you might not agree with them. So it's about validating somebody's experience. And the more you can be mindful about your own judgments and thoughts about the person, the more you're able to really accept their reality and try to understand what's going on for them. You know, if the way the knives go in the washing machine is that important to them, then it makes total sense that right now they're going to be really shitty with you, you know, and you can understand and come to a place of connection rather than a place of antagonism. Let me know if this is making sense for you. Do you get where I'm at with where I'm going with this, and how kind of letting go and seeing through your judgments can really help you? Let me know how this is landing for you, ladies. Similarly, being right. And, you know, there's a nice phrase that gets bandied around, but it's so important. Choose love rather than being right. Choose love, not being right. And it's a choice. Just like you can choose which thoughts you want to focus on, you can choose love. You can choose to have a loving response, and you can choose to let go of being right, and you can choose to let go of an argument rather than jumping up and down and wanting the kind of affirmation that you might be getting from being right. And negativity. There's some great research on negativity, and they say that aside beyond anything else, so, you know, common cultural backgrounds with couples, common experience, whether you have similar interests, beyond all of that, what's more important in relationship success is having a ratio of 7-to-1 positive statements to negative statements. In other words, every time you speak a negative statement to your partner, you need to say 7 positive things. So for those of you who know that the balance might be not quite that, or might be even the other way around, that you tend to kind of criticize or judge your partner and then say the occasional nice thing, I invite you to take a bit of an inventory on this. Really, follow yourself around with a notebook and a pen and have 2 columns, positive and negative statements, and just make little marks, you know, little bunches of 5s, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then a line across it. And see how many things you say that are positive and empowering, and see how many things you say that are negative and critical, without judging yourself, but just to see where you're at with that ratio. It's pretty amazing, and many of us just learn to be very stingy with appreciation. So Bronwyn, great question. My only thought on this relationship stuff is that my husband isn't doing this. I know, and we all often say, I hear this a lot in our workshops, is that my husband doesn't do that. It's not fair. Why am I doing all the work? You're doing the work, A, because you're here, B, because you're learning the tools, and C, because, you know, communication really is, if you look at the history and the background and the DNA of men and women, it is our realm. You know, we tend and befriend, as well as fight, flight, and freeze. We have a tend and befriend way of dealing with stress, which is to communicate. We are the communicators much more than men. And there's a lot of research on that the difference between the male brain and the female brain. So it's about taking ownership of an area in a relationship that we can drive. And the other thing is, Bronwyn, it only takes one person to change a dynamic. So if you imagine a relationship as being a game of tennis, 2 people are batting a ball over a tennis court, you know, backwards and forwards. It's like emotional tennis. It's the same game. He criticizes, you get defensive. You criticize, he gets defensive. You just play that old game. It only takes one person to walk off court and the game's finished. Another way of saying that is, what's the sound of one hand clapping? That's a lovely quote from Zen. It's called a Zen koan. It's a question to help you go deeper into the stillness. What's the sound of one hand clapping? Of course, there isn't any, right? But it's not for you to answer with your mind. It's for you to investigate that question and find the gap between the thoughts. Actually, it's a very deep question, but it's very relevant to any conflict or situations with partners where you feel they're not playing ball, because you don't have to clap back. What's the sound of one hand clapping? You just be the one hand. You don't clap back to them, right? So really take responsibility for what you can do, and things change. It only takes one person to change, really. I know it might seem not fair, but it's a gift that you can give yourself. Remember, this is about yourself as well as the relationship. Okay, so becoming a doormat. Can you let me know why you think you'd be a doormat, Bronwyn? why you think you'd be doormat. Is that because you're being nice or being positive? Is that what you mean? You can still set boundaries. Boundaries are totally fine, but you don't need to set boundaries from criticism or judgment, right? You set boundaries from your queen. This isn't working for me. What do you need to be able to give me what I need? That's not being negative or critical. So I certainly don't see any place for being a doormat, but send me a message and let me know what you mean if I've missed the way that you're talking about that. So being a good partner is not being a doormat. Absolutely not. Being a good partner is sharing honestly how you feel, but saying, I'm feeling angry, I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling upset, I'm feeling disconnected, I'm feeling like I want to throw a plate at you right now, is very different from going, you bastard, and chucking the plate. Do you understand? That's the difference. Mindfulness will give you the capacity to observe your feelings, observe your judgments and your thoughts, and to report them, reporting the weather. So you're able to say, I'm angry, I'm so angry, I feel like chucking a plate at you and walking out the door right now. I'm really furious. But I'm not doing anger. I'm sharing, I'm reporting the weather. Does that make sense, Bronwyn, to you? So boundaries absolutely are part of sharing, but that doesn't need to come with criticism, judgment, finger pointing, case building, being right, or any of that stuff. It's just, this doesn't work for me. This is what I need. What do you need to be able to give me what I need? And I'm feeling this right now. Yeah? Okay, does that make sense? Let me know, Bronwyn. Cool. All right, great. So, just to remember that the definition of suffering is wanting something to be different from how it is. So acceptance of the other brings freedom. Last time we talked about acceptance of yourself, acceptance of the moment brings freedom. But actually acceptance of the other brings freedom. Now what I mean by this is you don't have to accept bad behavior. We're not talking about the doormat thing again. I'm just saying accept how that person is. If you want your partner to buy you flowers every week and write you love poetry, and they don't, you're going to be suffering. If you want your partner to remember that it's recycling day and to take it all out for you every single week, and they never remember, you'll be suffering. If you want your partner to remember your anniversary every year and buy you a big present, and they don't, you'll be suffering. If you want your partner to touch you or stroke your hair in a certain way and they don't, you'll be suffering. So accepting how the person is stops you suffering. Do you get what I'm meaning by that? Because any time that you're wanting life to be different from how it is, you're suffering. From that moment, once you get back into acceptance, you can find your heart again, okay? Because you can't feel good about somebody when you're going, I wish he was different, I wish she was different, he's a pain in the ass, it's awful, it's terrible. You've got to come from acceptance first. Remember, you've only got two choices in every moment if you want to be happy. You accept or you change. Now, I know many, many women want to change their partners. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But when you're coming from, I don't like this person as they are, they've got to change, you are suffering. You're suffering. They might be fine, but you're in a state of upset and suffering. And you need to come from acceptance first up. So let go, accept them as they are. And actually, look, if someone's done something for the last 10, 20, 30, 40 years the same way, and you still get upset about it, that's really your problem. Do you get what I mean? You need to accept that, okay, this person doesn't do that. This person's never going to do that. And stop being disappointed every time they don't, because that's just not what they do. If you can't deal with it, you then need to have a conversation. Is it a deal breaker? Is it a boundary conversation for you? Is it something that you can learn how to let go of a different way? What do you need to do to be at peace with that? If this person, imagine this person's never, ever going to change, what do you need to do to be at peace with it? Come back to being responsible for yourself, and however much they don't do the thing that you want them to do, this is still your life, this is still your opportunity to be happy no matter what. Yeah? Is that really clear for everyone? Let me know if it's not. It's really important. Accept or change, accept or change. So we're going to look at conflict now and what causes conflict and how you can manage that from a mindfulness perspective. So values conflicts, for those of you who've been in some of one of many courses, you'll know what values are. You'll know that we elicit values to get clear on what's important to us. So the values are things that are important to us, that we spend time and money on, and they determine the decisions that we make. Now, in relationships, you can do your relationship values, and those of you who are coming to Be Love, which is in a couple of weeks now, we'll be working with your relationship values. But in relationships, we often get into conflict because we have differing things that are important to us. So, at a big level, you might have somebody who values monogamy and someone else who wants open relationships. It's going to be a tricky relationship if you're with somebody like that, right? Or if somebody values honesty and the other person values kind of keeping the water smooth, so like pleasing people, or harmony, because the person who values harmony might not want to tell the truth, right? So the values can be of conflict, and there's some really great exercises that you can do to align values in relationship, which can really kind of help stick people together. I won't be doing that today. That's a different program, and we'll look at that in Be Love as well at one of many. But values conflicts are certainly something, if you're having trouble with conflict, to have a look at. Love languages are something else. If you are coming to Be Love, we will ask you to do the love languages quiz. It's by Gary Chapman, and there are 5 love languages. There are gifts, words of appreciation, acts of service, quality time, and physical touch. And we each have a different way that we've learned to express love, often from our past, our upbringings. And very, very commonly we get into a relationship with somebody who has a different love language. Now, if those aren't aligned, he'll be speaking French and you're speaking Japanese. It's like you can't kind of understand each other. And I often see couples and in my work with in my private practice, I've seen couples come in and the husband says, she doesn't love me, she never wants to have sex, or she never hugs me. And the wife will come in and goes, he never loves me, he never tells me he loves me. And they're both saying they adore the other person, but they don't kind of relate through the communication side of love. So that's one to get sorted as well. Another thing is what we call negative anchoring, which is when you have a negative feeling around somebody and it keeps getting repeated. So every time they come in the door and they're late from work, you get pissed off. Before long, if that keeps happening, you just get pissed off when they walk in the door. You just have to look at their face and get pissed off. So that's something that can happen as well. Stored emotions. If you get pissed off with them enough times, you're sitting on a bag of fury, of resentment, of anger, and feeling hard done by. If you don't take responsibility for that and bring mindfulness to that and do some emotional clearing, that will end up really getting in the way. I like to talk about bricks in a wall. At the beginning of a relationship, you have a lovely clear slate, and then you get pissed off about something, don't let it go, and then there's a brick in the wall, right? And then there's something else that happens the next week, and there's another brick in the wall. And if you don't attend to that before long, there's a 6-foot-high wall between you that you kind of have to be on tiptoes to peer over the top of to look at the other person. It's very easy to build that wall, and it takes quite an effort to break it down again. So don't store up emotions. Use these mindfulness practices to clear your emotions, to see your judgments of the other person as just that, as just thoughts and judgments without being the truth of it, and learn to keep letting go. Now, subpersonalities, I will show you in a second, really impact relationships in a way. And also shadow is the deepest parts of us that tend to come out. Research shows again that we hit our deepest shadow, the parts of us that we don't like, the parts of us that are in the dark, our selfishness, our jealousy, our rage, our real insecurities, our abandonment issues, all this stuff tends to come up at the 4-year mark in relationship, but big time at the 7-year mark in relationship. When you've been with somebody for that long, you tend to be relaxed enough that all the kind of negativity that we have inside us comes up, and that often hits a bit of a crisis point at 7 years. So that can come up. In terms of subpersonalities, you're not in relationship with one person. You're in relationship with lots of subpersonalities, really. Lots of different people. We're all made up of these different parts. And here are some examples. We've got the pusher, which is the kind of like Superwoman, right? The desire to push forward, to blast through things and to always be in action and to not stop. The pleaser is the part of us that wants to make sure everyone likes us, that there's harmony everywhere and no conflict. The protector is the part that likes to make sure we're safe, doesn't want us to be vulnerable, doesn't want us to feel ashamed or upset in any way. The inner critic is the part of us that tells us what we've done wrong, that points out our faults and makes us feel really bad about ourselves. We've got the vulnerable child part of us that's that self in us that makes us feel just really scared of life or scared of people or scared of situations or really shy or just really vulnerable and feels a lot. We have a responsible self that is, very common in the West as well. We take responsibility for our families and for life and for social media and for making sure that the house is running and the pets are okay and everything's sorted and the knives are the right way up in the dishwasher, right? We have a rule maker as well. That is very strong in a lot of people. You have to drive this way and eat this way and hold your fork that way and sit this way and type that way, and like everything has a rule around it. On the other side of it, you've got the slob, someone who doesn't care about any of that stuff. They just like to hang out and be however they are. Perfectionist will notice any tiny little scrap of dust on the carpet, will walk into a room and be able to point out a tiny shadow of dirt on the wall and the paint. The perfectionist will get irritated and feel that the world's ending if the towels aren't straight or the dishes are on the sink. It's pretty common actually, the perfectionist, and it's also against oneself as well, that one has to be perfect oneself and show up beautifully and do the best job, and everything has to be perfect. Rational mind is actually a self or a subpersonality. Some people get incredibly identified with their minds, and you talk to them and they're just like an encyclopedia. It's like interacting with a book. They just come at life with no feeling. They're just in their heads the whole time, and like to argue, like to debate, like to kind of analyze everything. You know what I mean? That's the rational mind, is a self. People develop that as a way of being. We have the selfish part of us. Some people do that a lot, right? They're really identified with just being selfish, out to look after themselves. The judge is really judgmental of other people. Creative. Some people have a very strong creative subpersonality. They're always just kind of free-flowing, more hippie type and creating things and flowing. And then we have a rebel that is opposite the rule maker, that is rebellious and doesn't want to toe the line and follow the rules. There are lots and lots of selves, and I've actually taught this work for a long time now. It's brilliant work. It's called Voice Dialogue, and it's actually about how to understand the impact of these roles, how to communicate with them directly, and how to allow us to separate from them so that we're no longer identified with just being the rule maker or the responsible self or the perfectionist. While there are lots of different subpersonalities, we all tend to identify with between 4 and 6 of them, and we think that's us. We think that we're the person that everything has to be perfect for, and that we like to protect ourselves, and we like to please everybody, and we like to always be busy and get stuff done and be in the pusher. We think that's us. Whereas in fact, these are roles that you've developed through your upbringing as a response to your environment. If you get praise for doing really well at school, you'll develop a pusher or a perfectionist. If you get in trouble for getting a C at school rather than an A, you will develop an even stronger perfectionist, because you'll want the approval and you'll work out a way of, all right, If I get love from being successful, then I'm going to be really successful and I'm going to get straight A's. So you develop a pusher or a perfectionist to get that love. Does that make sense, everybody? They're not actually who you are. You can learn to separate from them and be mindful of them. So if we come back to our mindfulness practice, you can be mindful of a thought, aware of a thought, and separate from a thought. You can be aware of your emotions and just learn to observe and feel without getting caught up in what they mean. And you can learn to be aware of your personality and yourselves in the same way, that you're not actually them. You're more than somebody who likes the knives to be the right way up in the washing machine. You're way, way more than that. You're way bigger than that. But when we caught up in that limited role and identification of who we are, we get stuck in playing that game. Yeah? So, using mindfulness to become aware of these roles means that you can get some space. So, if you look at this diagram here, that we have opposites, right? So the responsible self will often get into a relationship with a slob. A perfectionist will get into a relationship with a slob. So let's say a pleaser over here will often get into a relationship with a more selfish person, because the pleaser likes to give and the selfish person likes to take. Fabulous. It works for so long, and then the pleaser gets really resentful. You might have a rule maker down here in relationship with a rebel. You know, one person really likes to toe the line and the other person likes to break the rules and gets annoyed with how kind of uptight the rule maker is. So do you see how these are the types of conflicts that might ring some bells for you? That if you're in relationship with an opposite of yours, you will judge the crap out of them. Especially things like, the perfectionist slob dynamic. Does that make sense, everyone? Is this ringing some bells? Or if you're in the pleaser and he's in the selfish, or if you're in the responsible and she's in the rebel, it will create a huge amount of conflict. So to bring mindfulness to this, the capacity to observe yourself, to notice what patterns you're in, to know what roles you're running, and then to be able to step back from them, stops judgment. It stops conflict in its tracks, because here's an imaginary seesaw. If you have the perfectionist on one end and the, let's say, the slob on the other end, this seesaw would normally be one end up in the air. Like if your perfectionist is really strong in yourself, you will be what we call disowning the slob. So you won't like chaos. You won't like disorder, right? You really want everything to be perfect. But through mindfulness, you can start to embrace your inner slob. What that means is you no longer believe that everything has to be perfect, because it doesn't. Who says everything has to be perfect, right? It's a rule that you have. Bronwyn's saying, I do this in my relationship with myself. Yeah, absolutely. Yep, totally. This can be with yourself. So it's not true that life has to be perfect, because it isn't. But when you have that rule, can you see that you're going to get into conflict with yourself, with other people, with yourself? By that I mean other parts of you. If you can bring consciousness and mindfulness to it, you can start to see that there is benefit in the perfectionist. Yes, it's great. You get a tidy house. You know where things are. You can file things effectively so that you know where stuff is when you come to do your tax return. But there's also benefit in being a slob. It means you can relax, you can chill out. It means you can sleep nicely at night, even when there's some dishes on the sink, right? So in other words, the aware ego, rather than just the ego that we looked at before, the ego has all these different selves and thinks that I am the perfectionist, I am the pleaser, I am the inner critic. The aware ego stands between these selves and knows that each of these selves has an upside and a downside. The perfectionist has an upside. Great, you get a tidy house. The downside is, frankly, you're a pain to be with. You're a real pain, because everything's got to be perfect. You're picky if it's not. You're stressed and anxious if it's not. You're not fun to be with. You can't let your hair down. And you're going to be really critical of others. Do you get that? The slob on the other side, excuse me, the slob is, has a lot of downside, right? Stuff's maybe dirty, stuff doesn't get done, maybe the electricity gets cut off because you can't be bothered to pay the bills. However, there's an upside to the slob, which is you can be happy in the middle of chaos. You can relax and watch TV and put your feet up and be content, even though, there's dishes piled up on the sink or there's stuff all over the floor. It's a way of just being pretty let go and easygoing about life. Yeah? So it's about seeing the benefit and the downside of each of these selves rather than judging other people for the way that you want them to be. So mindfulness is really important in this. Now, if this is of interest to you, the work around voice dialogue and selves and subpersonalities is such a quick way to get to the bottom of conflicts in relationships, but also it's supercharged personal development. Out of everything that I've done over 25, 27 years now in the realm of self-development, I find personally voice dialogue and the work around different selves is so quick and so effective. So if you're interested in that, it's not the scope of this program, but feel free to reach out to me and I can explore that together. So once you can get awareness of thoughts, of feelings, and of what roles you're playing, what subpersonalities you're in, then you can start to communicate from awareness. This means starting to communicate from this neutral place, right? This aware ego place in the middle, this place here, rather than being identified with, I'm the perfectionist, I'm right, and you're wrong because you're a slob. Communicating from the aware ego is a place of, hey, I love it when the dishes are all washed. It feels really great to me. And is there any way that we can set up a washing up rota, so that we can each take turns and then the house is tidy? But you're not upset about it anymore. You're not judging the other person as being wrong and you're not being mean to them, right? So communicating from awareness, very interesting. So I'll talk to clients and we'll have one person come in and say, so I just told him that I want him to take the kids to school in the mornings and he blew up in my face. I can't imagine. He's got so many problems. I don't know what's going on. You talk to the husband and he says, she attacked me. She attacked me. I felt totally judged, So it's not just about what you say, it's who says it. Now, if you say something and your partner reacts to what you've said, I pretty much guarantee that you weren't talking from aware ego. You weren't talking from this place here. Yeah, you were identified with a self. So if I say, I'll give you an example. If I say to you, just imagine I'm the husband, you're the wife. No, I'm the wife, you're the husband for a moment. If I say to you, honey, I'm so upset that when you came home, you came home late and you didn't call me. I'm really upset and supper's ruined. What does that induct in you? How do you feel when I say that? How do you want to respond to that? Defensive. Yep. Yep. Defensive. Absolutely. You'll get your hackles up, right, if I say it like that. If I say the same sentence and I say to you, honey, I'm really upset that you came home late. I feel really, I can't remember what I said before, sorry. I feel really upset that you came home late. I'm really sad and dinner's spoiled. What does that induct in you? You maybe feel guilty, right? Or you want to look after me, or you want to fix it. I'm going into needy child and I'm pulling kind of like a parent self out of you. Or if I just stand in the middle of that seesaw and just say, honey, when you came home late, I felt really sad and unloved and dinner's burnt. I'd love it if you could call me next time. I'm saying it without hooks. I'm not trying to get you to be angry. I'm not trying to get you to be guilty. I'm just reporting the weather. Yeah? So being able to communicate from this aware ego place of mindful awareness will really, really help you in your relationships to build communication rather than conflict, to build connection rather than distance. So I'd love you all to practice this exercise, this communication exercise, and say one sentence, the same sentence, in 3 different ways. Angry parent, which is the critical, you came home late and you didn't let me know and now supper's ruined, right? From the needy child, you came home late and now supper's ruined, it's really from that place. Or just the mindful awareness of neutrally reporting the weather. And just see what happens. So building your awareness with yourself. Okay, so we're going to do another practice now, give you another tool of just being able to keep letting go of thoughts. So this is the leaf exercise. So when you go ahead, make sure you're comfortable. And if you're driving or listening to this out there, don't do this exercise right now. Do it when you come home and come back to it and practice it later. This is going to be a closed eye exercise, so make sure you're safe and comfortable to do this right now. So for those of you who are, go ahead, get comfy, close your eyes, take a deep breath in and out, and in and out. Good. Now, we've been talking a lot. I've been sharing a lot of different ideas with you, and you've probably had a lot of thoughts about those things. I can do it, I can't do it. What about my partner? Are they going to be open to it? Lots of different thoughts. So I want you now to just notice what's going on in your mind. Is it busy? Are there lots of thoughts going on? Are they judgments? Are there feelings associated with those thoughts? How are they making you feel? Are they empowering thoughts? Are they disempowering thoughts? How are you feeling as a result of those thoughts? Just bringing your awareness to your whole body, noticing sensations. Maybe there's discomfort or pain somewhere, tightness, tension. Just being fully present in this moment. As we talked about being curious with other people, be curious right now as to your own experience. What's going on inside you right in this moment? Without judgment, with neutral, observing, welcoming any feelings you're having, acknowledging what's going on for you. And then moving your attention back to your mind and noticing what thoughts are swimming past, what fishes are swimming past. And I want you to imagine now that you're walking through a forest, hearing the rustling of the leaves, feeling your feet crunching the leaves as you walk through the forest, seeing blue sky above you. Maybe there are some leaves falling from the trees as they flutter down, touching your hair as they float down to the ground. Hearing some birds singing. And as you keep walking through the forest, you can start to hear the rippling of a stream. And with every footfall crunching through the forest, through the leaves, the sound gets louder until you come out into a clearing. And past the rocks, you can see the bubbling flow of a small river. Just take yourself down next to the river, sitting down by the side of the river. Grab a comfy spot on a rock. And there are leaves, beautiful autumn leaves, golds and russet, red, orange, yellow, all around you. And as you're sitting there, I want you to pick up a leaf in your hand, noticing the shape of the leaf, the veins on the leaf, the colour, the texture. And the next thought that comes into your mind, imagine you can take it out of your mind, put it on that leaf, and then let it go onto that stream, floating downriver. Watching that thought float off into the distance as the river takes the leaf, burbling, floating round the corner, and off it goes. And then with the next thought, pick up a different colour leaf. Look at it, notice the veins, the pattern on the leaf, the serrated edges. Picking up that thought, putting it on the leaf, gently leaning forward and putting that leaf onto the water and watching as the river burbles and babbles that leaf downstream. Picking up the next leaf, looking at it, putting the thought on that leaf, and letting that leaf float off downstream, taking your thought with it. Just continue that exercise, placing each thought on a leaf, and watch it float downstream. No judgment of the thoughts, just watching, placing, and letting go. And as you keep doing that, start to notice now, in between each time you do that, there's a space. Thought, put it on the leaf, let it go downstream. And then there's a space before the next thought. Each time there's a space, now I want you to invite it. Almost imagine that you can dive into that space. Expand that space. Imagine you can stretch that space. Good. Continuing then to place the next thought on the leaf. Good. Well done. Very good. And then bringing your awareness into your body, noticing how you're feeling, noticing your feet on the floor. Take a deep breath in and out, becoming aware of your surroundings. Bring yourself back to the room and open your eyes. Okay, how was that? How was that? Was it easy for you? Let me know. Was it hard? Was it challenging? Were you able to just keep letting the thoughts go? Was that helpful for you? Relaxing. Okay, good. Good, Rhiannon. Nice. What else? Were you able to find the gap between thoughts? Were you able to, by doing that and kind of relating individually with each thoughts, were you able to find more of a gap between them? Because actually, if you get aware of them, there isn't a constant stream of thoughts. There's actually a thought, and then there's another thought. And then we get caught up in doing something, and then there's another thought, right? So it's actually not the case that it's a constant stream of thoughts. But when we get, oh, good, Bronwyn, yeah, you found in the end, yes. Tricky, but yes, you got there in the end. So when we can find that gap between thoughts, that's when things really start to open up. Could keep letting them go, Kath, and felt the gap, but kept thinking about the gap. I love it. I love it. And for those of you who've done any meditation before, the classic, you know, you're kind of sitting there doing your meditation practice, and then you go, yeah, I've got it. This is it. This is it. And of course, at that point, you haven't got it at all. So the mind is so tricky, really tricksy thing. So it's, as I said before, it's not something to just think you can do for 5 minutes and then you've got it. It's a constant practice, it's a continual practice of opening up, letting go, opening up, letting go, coming back. And when they do experiments, they do mindfulness experiments, right, with big groups of people, and they get everybody to close their eyes and breathe in and out and count as 1. Breathe in and out, count as 2. Breathe in and out, count as 3, right? And keep going. And to let the facilitator know how far they get in their counting. Do you know what the average number is that they get to? Guess. No, not 50. No, 7. 7 breaths before the mind wanders and they get completely distracted and start thinking about the shopping, right? So you're not alone, my lovelies. You're not alone. It's not easy, but it is essential. It really is. I mean, that to me just illustrates how rife the kind of the control of the mind has over us. It's particularly in the West when we don't really have meditation in our culture, and we don't have any kind of a lot of spiritual practices in our culture. We don't talk about it really. That it's so difficult for us to change that relationship with the mind when we've been taught from the word go that we have to think about stuff all the time, and we're really judged for and given accolade for thinking a lot. So there you go. You're not alone. Seven breaths is about the average, so don't worry about it. You're doing fine. Even if you get 2 breaths, it's fine. Okay, so that's a little exercise for you to continue doing through the week. Excuse me. And there's a lovely quote here. In any relationship, especially marriage, be as free of compulsive thinking as possible. In other words, the more space there is in the relationship, inner space, the more love there is, because love arises out of the inner spaciousness. And that's the point here, ladies, is that when you are caught up in your mind, in judgments, in defensiveness, in it's him, not me, I'm right, he's wrong, she's horrible, I'm wonderful, all this stuff. When we're caught up in our ego, when we're caught up in our subpersonalities and our judgments and our feelings and our victim and martyr and all these things, there's not a lot of love going on, because you can't be experiencing love when you're contracted and afraid or angry. So you have to let go of these things so that you can get back into your heart again and find the love. So it's about really bringing your best self to relationship. That's something I'm very stalwart about, is that we bring our best selves to relationship, not our worst selves, which is so common because, we might maybe see them every day, right? And we end up kind of being less respectful than we would be to somebody in a shop, which to me just doesn't work. I'm not saying I've got it sorted, but I'm certainly very, very clear on that this is how we need to move towards relationship. So yeah, this inner spaciousness, which you get through mindfulness, very much so, is so important to allow the love. When you're angry and bitter and resentful, there ain't a lot of love going on. So the more you can take responsibility for your state and for managing your own mind, then it's totally possible to find love more of the time. So I love this quote. Yeah, Bronwyn, of course, absolutely. Yeah, get in touch with me personally, and I'm very happy to chat more about subpersonalities and how that might be impacting for you, for sure. Okay, so being happy in relationships. Being happy in relationships. We looked at clear mind. The next point is open heart. Okay, so step 2 is open heart. And very simply, this one's very simple. The better you handle your emotions, the better your relationship. You're not dumping your anger on them. You're not getting all jealous and getting, mean and snipey because actually you're feeling jealous or insecure. You're not getting sad and depressed because of something that's happening at work and getting stuck in that and then taking it out on your partner, or just being a wet rag to be around. If you don't look after your own needs, if you don't handle your own emotions, you are painful to be around, let alone your partner. So it's critical that you find ways to move your emotions through so that you can be the best person you can possibly be for your partner or for your family if you're not in a relationship right now. So we've talked about emotional openness last week. So your job, I would say, in a relationship is to stay open. To stay open no matter what you're feeling. Now, I just want to explain this. Staying open means keeping your heart open. And you can keep your heart open even if you're sad, if you're hurt, if you're angry. You can keep your heart open and not close down to that person. It is not easy, but it's very possible. So to do that, excuse me, you want to be avoiding withdrawal or shutting down. The moment you withdraw and shut down from a person, you're doing it to punish them, to protect yourself. And the relationship can't kind of open up or thrive if you've shut down. You need to go to your partner and say, I'm feeling so angry that I want to shut down or I want to withdraw from you, but I'm not going to do that because I'm committed to having an open connection with you. But I just feel like I can't see you right now, or I'm really, finding it really hard to. That's fine, Bronwyn. That's cool. I will be in touch later. Thanks for the message. Also, can I talk to you later about this? I just need 5 minutes and then I'll be back to you. So that's something I used to say with my partner was, I can't talk. I'm too upset right now to talk. Can you give me 5 minutes and then let's chat? I just need 5 minutes. I go outside, I scream, I jump up and down, I rant and rave, I let go, and then I come back and I can be okay, So don't shut down or tell the person about it if you feel like shutting down. Anger, again, don't do anger. Just talk about it. I'm angry. I'm feeling like throwing the cup across the room. I'm just furious right now. Say it rather than do it. Reactivity, flipping out over little things, Rather than being reactive, say, I feel like getting really reactive. Just tell on yourself, communicate about your feelings. Histrionics, having a hissy fit, chucking stuff around, just being a right old so-and-so. Don't do it. And being defensive as well. Getting defensive and getting your hackles up when somebody shares something with you. And I know these are all really hard things to do, but the more mindfulness you practice, the more you'll be able to notice that these responses are kind of arising within you, and you'll be able to watch them without acting out of them. Does that make sense, everyone? So it's the capacity to see these impulses, to notice them, and if you want to communicate about them, communicating in a neutral way about them, and then letting go and taking responsibility about clearing those emotions for yourself. Some ways to do that: empty emotions. We've talked about this briefly last time, but just to flag some extra ways that you can do that. I talked about emotional equity last time. The passive approach to emptying emotions is what we practiced last time, which is focus on an emotion until it goes. Remember, the more you can accept an emotion, actually, the quicker it moves through. You just allow it to be there. Neither suppressing emotions nor wallowing in them. This is a fine line, but as you practice, you'll learn to be able to just allow them, let them move through without avoiding them or without kind of getting caught up in the story of them. Remember, all emotions are equal and they're just feelings, and you can allow them all to be there without the judgment or the labels. Okay, so that's the passive approach. You are not this. You are not this. You are not this feeling. You are not this thought. You are not this situation. You are not this subpersonality. You are not this. You are more than this. It's a really nice little phrase to keep reminding yourself if you're upset. You are not this. You're having this as an experience. Remember we talked last time about the clouds in the sky? Yeah. So the clouds in the sky are just clouds moving through bright sunny sunshine. If you go high enough, you'll find the blue sky again. So you are not this. And then the active approach to emptying emotions. Some of you know things like emotional freedom technique, which is a tapping process. Some of you know NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. If you don't know those techniques and you want to investigate them, you can research. There are lots of people in our community that do EFT or NLP. They're really good things at just helping you to let go of limiting beliefs and move through your emotions. Dynamic meditation. Now, some of you have been in a room with me doing dynamic meditation, what did I call it? Or move meditation, where you just open up your body, you open up through your feelings and you release and then come back to a spacious place. It's very hard to meditate when you're sitting on a volcano. So move your emotions out first, move your body, open up your whole energy system, and then you can find a place of peaceful mindfulness through doing that. So if you want to know more about that, you can touch base with me. Bioenergetics, some of you may have done that. It's a pretty intense process, but again, it's using the body to get into different postures and open up through the point of discomfort. And there's a lot of emotional release happens when you start to let go of the way that the body holds emotions down. That's another, nice trick to kind of for emotional release. You can get a punching bag, literally get a punching bag with some gloves and punch the crap out of a punching bag when you're really angry. Like, let it out in a safe way, not on somebody else. Dancing. Dancing is fantastic because you're getting into your body, you're moving your body out of the way that we get contracted and get set in particular postures when we're upset. Dancing, or you don't have to dance in a pretty way, you just move your body, right? Put a song on and just move. Just move yourself out of your state. And exercise, any form of exercise can help you, again, change your state, move your emotions through, pound the pavement, and to really, just clear what's going on for you. How do they sound? Do they sound like things that you could do? This, I feel, is your absolute responsibility in a relationship. The more you can empty your own emotions and then come to your partner in a positive state, in a way that you're able to communicate from aware ego and clearly, the better your relationship's going to be. And the last part here is, once you learn to clear the mind, to use mindfulness, to not, get caught up in judgments, to open your heart so that you can move through your emotions back to love, then it's a case of bringing full expression to your relationship. And this is where it gets really, really juicy. Because when I said bring your best self to your relationship, I mean all of you, right? Find your creativity again. What have you shut yourself down to? And often I hear from women that they get so caught up in being a good wife or a partner or a mum that they forget their own creativity. But it's essential to bring something new to the table in a relationship, especially if you've been with someone for a long time. So when did you last paint a picture? When did you last wear something totally different? When did you last drive to work a different way? When did you last write a poem? When did you last make sandcastles? So bringing your creativity to your relationship means that you're bringing something fresh and new to talk about. You're bringing a new part of you to the table that your partner can be amazed by. Even if you've been together 30 years and they didn't know that you could draw such wonderful stick figures or make a nice pot, Interests. Find interests. Even if you're busy, please make time, all of you, to investigate your interests. And if you can't even think of what your interests are, you want to have a real big red flag going off, going, maybe I've forgotten myself here, right? So it's about getting back to what excites you, what's interesting for you, what can you go out by yourself and investigate and then bring back to your relationship. Or maybe start a new interest together, go do tango together. Travel. Travel's such a great way of opening your eyes, getting yourself out of your daily routine and getting yourself out of your habitual subpersonalities as well. You can't being a strong perfectionist, if you're traveling through India, you'll drive yourself nuts. So it's great to go traveling. Friendships. Have you forgotten your friendships recently? Do you need to make a new friend? Do you need to go sing in a choir and find a new friend to hang out with and do music with? Doing soft play, for those of you in one of many who know about going out on soft play dates. Education. Learn something new. Go do a class. Study something. Focus on your growth. Actually focus on growing yourself so that you are more interesting to be around, that you're bringing something new to the table of your relationship. Go on some dates with your partner, even if you've been married for 20, 30 years. Go on a date and have it as a date. So ask your partner to pick you up. Put some nice clothes on and get dressed up and lippy and get your partner to take you out on a surprise date. You can even, say, pick me up from this coffee shop so it's exciting and take me out somewhere. I'd love to be surprised, Take me out somewhere new. Go on a date. Okay. And just notice with all these things, why have your previous relationships ended? Even if you've been married, is there a pattern when it gets hard? Is there a pattern in any previous relationships you might have had? Do you get caught in judgment? Is it criticism? Do you go into victim? Do you get stuck in perfectionist and get irritated and can't stand to be with a person anymore? Is it always their fault? Do you always pick the wrong guy or the wrong girl? What is it? You want to be aware of the patterns that you have around relationships, because there's so much juice. I love relationship. I think it's growth on steroids, really. I like to think of relationship as teacher. If you can have an attitude of relationship is a best teacher for you because it's day in, day out. They're going to press your buttons like no one else does. They probably know you better than anyone else does. You can have a really kind of big perspective on it, that every time they irritate you, you can learn something. You can let go of something. You can become more mindful. You can become more present, and you can open your heart more. So I really think that they're an amazing path to consciousness, and I invite you all to see relationship in a different way. So what are your next steps to improve your relationship? Even if you have a great one, maybe it could be better. Do you want to bring some more excitement in, or some more juiciness, or some more sensuality, or some more fun, some more spontaneity? Remember that variety is a big need. It's one of the 6 human needs. And over time, we get very hooked into security with a partner, but variety is essential to keep that spice going. So make sure you're bringing variety to the table. So what are your next steps, ladies? What do you need to do? Do you need to focus on your emotional state and clearing your emotions? Do you need to let go of judgment? Do you need to let go of labels? Do you need to go on a date? Do you need to paint a picture and show your partner? Do you need to find a partner? What is it you need to do, okay? Make sure that you have your next steps. And choose love. So the last thing I want to say on the subject is choose love. It's a choice. It really is. It's a choice to choose love. It's a choice to find love. And it's a choice to be love. And that the more you use mindfulness to let go of anything that isn't that, you'll find that this experience of love and connection shows up more and more. And even if you don't have an intimate relationship, you can find more and more love with those around you and in yourself, because it's always present, right? So your homework, my lovelies, is continuing to change this relationship with your mind, knowing that your mind really does make a terrible master but a great slave. So your homework is to... Oh, wrong slide. Your homework... Oh, where's my homework slide gone? Oh, I didn't put anything on the homework slide. Okay, sorry, it's empty. But your homework is to do the things that we've talked about. So to do the labels, so the clear mind exercise of not putting labels on things, so looking at things around you. Do some form of emotional clearing this week, whether it's passive or active, and practice communicating your feelings to your partner. So I'm wanting to get really defensive, or I'm wanting to shut down, but I'm feeling angry right now. So communicate from your feelings, and have a look at what subpersonalities you get caught up in. What subpersonalities do you get caught up in? And are there any subpersonality conflicts with you in your relationships? Great. Okay, good. And then the full expression part is to go out there and to make sure you've got something exciting to look forward to that's going to be a stretch for you. Okay. So thank you so much, everybody. I'm very happy to stay behind and answer any questions. If you've got any wins you want to share, any challenges that you're having, very happy to offer you any coaching and anything you want to have a chat about. So if you do, just put your hand up and I'll come down the line to you. For those of you who need to go now, thank you so much for being happy now. And I really look forward to chatting with you next week. So feel free to stay around, just put your hand up and I'll come down the line to you. Otherwise, I'll chat with you next week. Thanks, everybody. Okay, so any questions, any hands, anything you want to have a chat about? No, you all okay? Okay, cool. If that's fine, great. Lots to think about. That's great. All right, my lovelies, fabulous. Well, in that case, we will wrap up there if there aren't any questions. And please come back to me in the forum. Let me know how you're doing. Put any questions in there and we'll touch base during the week. And otherwise, we will chat next Tuesday at the same time. Look forward to it. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great day. Bye.